Hello, Hilltop Band. I am here with the very first of our instrumental challenges for you. This is going to be an enrichment activity, meaning that it is not something that's going to be a graded activity, so it's not going to show up in your grade. This is a way for, if you have your instrument home, and I know that not everybody does, for you to be active with your instrument and to continue practicing, and for this one, to tie it in with your ToneSavvy. So what you're working on ToneSavvy is directly related to our ToneSavvy Scale Challenge. A little bit of drama there. The idea here is I'm challenging you to use your instrument to play the scales that are in your level of ToneSavvy. If you have a ToneSavvy game called Scale Building. And the way I built your ToneSavvy games, about every other level, you're going to have a ToneSavvy Scale Building game in it. And it's going to alternate with a key signature identification game. And the key signature identification games come first, meaning that you're going to identify key signatures, and then you're going to build scales in the next level based on the ones that you're identifying. And as you go along, there are more scales for you to identify. So this challenge continues onwards as you go. So you can use this challenge every new level that you get to with scale builders. You can go ahead and try to then play those scales on your instruments. And because people are on different levels, I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can build this into what you're doing. Because people have different ranges on their instruments, meaning they know a different number of notes. I'll show you things that hilltoppers can do. Since you may not know all of the notes in your scale yet, I'm going to show you some ways that you can adapt this all the way up to high school folks who are in music theory. I'm going to show you some ways that you can kind of scale this up a little bit as you're taking on your ToneSavvy Scale Challenge. Now, one thing that I recommend with this is that you use a metronome. And I have my laptop here, and I have it turned to the 8notes.com metronome. And I'm going to put a link to this into the same post that this challenge is included on. And I recommend that you use this as you're playing your scales so that you can keep a steady beat as you go. And there's a couple different little options that I'll show you with this too. Now, a scale, for those who may not be familiar or who are just learning about those, just to remind you, a scale is a collection of notes from a given starting note up to the same note of the same name, and then back down. And so it's a way of practicing different collections of notes that different songs might be built on. All of us right now in ToneSavvy are focusing on major scales. Now, depending on the level that you're currently on, you may have more major scales if you are further along in your ToneSavvy levels than the earlier levels where you may have less. Everybody from ToneSavvy Tutorial 2 and higher has at least 2 scales in there. And for those in ToneSavvy Tutorial 2, those are mostly Hilltop Band members here, you have 5-note versions of these. Now, if you don't know a fingering in your scale, if you're looking at those notes and you're not sure about a fingering, the back of your book, whether it's a blue book or an orange book, or if you are a high school student and you have a Foundations for Superior Performance at home, your books have a fingering chart that you can use that shows you a picture of what that looks like on your instrument. So in the measures of success, blue books and orange books for middle school and Hilltop, those are in the back of your book. If you are a Foundations for Superior Performance, yours are located at the front of your book. But check those for any fingerings that you need. Now, just for an example, if I was a Hilltop student, this is how I would approach the ToneSavvy Scale Challenge. Oh, that would be like, that's the last time, I think. Promise. Okay, so when I turn on my metronome, what you're going to hear is beeping. Now, I set it to none so that all the beeps are the same. When you see none, 2, 3, and 4 on the options, that's the number of beats in a measure. I like the none because it's easy, just the same beat over and over again. Now, you could play this, and I have it set to 100 beats per minute right now. You can turn it lower for slower or higher for faster, depending on where you like to be and where you're comfortable playing this. You may want to turn it down slower to start if you are a person who's playing scales for the first time. So this would be a 5-note version of the C scale. That's one of the scales from tutorial 2. So that would be a 5-note version of the C scale. Now you also have a G scale in there, and that one's going to sound like this. I chipped a note a little bit there, but you get the idea. Now it's important that if the note is flat or sharp in the scale, now none of those are for me, but you have to make sure that you're using the right version of the note. So check your books carefully. If it's a flat version of a note in a scale or a sharp version, make sure you're using that version of the fingering as you're playing. Now, if you are a middle school student, you probably have the range for your C scale. And depending on your instrument, like flute players, you may need to play a C scale starting on your C that's the 3rd space. You might need to do that to play it in the range that you need. And that's okay. If you need to change the range of a note, you can do that. So middle school folks, that's one of the options that we have. So this is my C scale, and I'm going to play this all the way up to my higher C and then all the way back down. And that would be my C scale up and down for that. Now, for the G scale, just to give an example here, of scales that might be above or below your range, a couple ways you can do this. As a trumpet player, I could start on a lower version of G, like this. I could do that. Or I could play a 5-note version of the scale on the higher version. So you can mix and match your 8-note and 5-note versions. And that's okay. If you mix and match depending on where your range is, that's fine. If you wanted to stretch your notes to maybe use half notes instead of quarter notes, right now I'm playing quarter notes, and hopefully you can hear my metronome clicking away over here. If I was to do half notes, that would change it like this. So that would be using 2 beats for each note, and that would be a way that I can change it up too, is I can change the number of beats. Now, if you're really feeling like you want to give something a try that's a little bit faster, you could even keep the same metronome marking and try 8 notes, like this. Sorry. You could try doing 8 notes, like that. So that would be another option for middle school folks too. Now, high school folks, you're going to get into more scales as you're playing. So I would expect that high school folks that you're able to do most of these. If you're going to take on them, I'm not going to the challenge. You know what I'm saying. If you were to take on the challenge, I would want high school folks to try to do all scales with 8 notes. And high school folks, you can try as a possible scale up, and your Foundations for Superior Performance has this. If you're looking from like page 10 to like page 29, you have 2-octave versions of your scale. So for example, if I was to play a 2-octave version of my G scale, would be 2 octaves, low G. Then I get to middle G, instead of going back down, I just keep on going all the way up to my upper one, and then I would go all the way back down. Now, other options here, there's a couple different things that you could do to have a little bit of fun here. If you're a jazz band student, middle school folks, high school folks, if you're a jazz band student, did you know that our metronome also has a jazz beat to it? I really hope you can hear that. It's basically a jazz drum set beat, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing my notes. So I could do... could do that, and I could play it with a swing. That's a push and pull, stretching and shrinking the notes. Jazz band folks, you know what we're talking about. We've used that in our rehearsals and performances. Another option, as you're doing this, for our music theory folks, and I did that with my swinging here. I did that here. I went up to the 9th here. So if you are a music theory student at the high school level taking that class, you can take your scales up to the 9th scale degree and then all the way back down. So if I'm playing a C scale, that means I would go from C to C, and then I would go up to D, and then all the way back down. So music theory folks, it's great to practice your scales, including that 9th. That's an extra scale up that you can try. Is a way that you can do that. Now, I made this video for you of me playing my scales, and I'd love to see you put together a video also. Now, keep in mind that our metronome has lots of different accompaniment patterns. That was rock. It's got a couple other ones on here. Be creative with it. Come up with a fun way to video the scales that you're playing for this. I've kind of a boring background behind me, but if you have a more fun background in your home that you'd like to use, by all means. And again, if you like to be Twitter famous, I will certainly give you that option on the form that I put to collect the videos that you submit. So again, I hope that you try to take on the ToneSavvy Scale Challenge! Sorry. And I'm looking forward to seeing your posts. So, till next time, see you soon, band.